Guten Tag, Alice. Okay, so it's the second video of the series. I'm going to first be talking about Meyer's use of purple prose, and then I'm going to move on to her writing style, and then how she ignores storytelling structure. Okay, so Meyer's stories are glumps of purple prose. According to Wikipedia, purple prose are overly extravagant, ornate, or flowery descriptions as to break the flow and draw attention to itself. Purple prose is sensually evocative beyond the requirements of its context. So purpley prose are a lot of flowery words strung together to describe something. For examples, a lot of members posted times when Bella describes just how pretty Edward is because, yeah, according to Ote Yoni, Edward's beauty is described 165 times in Twilight alone. The book has about 500 pages. Anybody with a calculator handy would be able to know that this means that Edward's beauty is mentioned once every 3 pages. I'm going to give what I think is probably the best example of Meyer's purple prose that she uses on Edward. It comes from the first page of chapter 13. Angel Boogie Pop posted this one. Edward in the sunlight was shocking. I couldn't get used to it, though I'd been staring at him all afternoon. His skin, white despite the faint flush from yesterday's hunting trip, literally sparkled like thousands of tiny diamonds were embedded in the surface. He laid perfectly still in the grass, his shirt open over his sculpted, incandescent chest, his scintillating arms bare, his glistening pale lavender lids shut. But of course he didn't sleep. A perfect statue, carved in some unknown stone, smooth like marble, glittering like crystal. Ko Bob or Carla posted, all I ever saw was Edward's face. It filled my vision and overwhelmed my mind. His eyes were a buttery, burning gold. And that comes from Breaking Dawn, page 48. I could go on from there, but I may vomit. Alright. Now I'm going to move on to Meyer's thesaurus rape. When we say thesaurus rape, we're talking about words that Meyer interjects into the story to sound more intelligent than she arguably is. The passage from chapter 13 would be an example like this, using words like scintillating to describe Edward's arms. Another example of this is how she uses the word said or any of its conjugated forms. There can be entire conversations, almost whole chapters, where Meyer will avoid the word said like the plague and use explained, scolded, hesitated, corrected, encouraged, hedged, gasped, continued, and even shrugged to replace the word said. It's as if Meyer goes out of her way to sound smart by using big words or less common ones. Sometimes she uses or misuses the words without seeming to actually know what they mean. She says that an old cross at the Cullens has a dark patina. Patina is a thin green layer on copper that comes from corrosion. Or it can mean a pleasing surface sheen that develops on an object with age or frequent handling. I'm guessing the cross isn't copper green color because it's wooden, and since it's a cross, I'm guessing the sheen isn't from use since it's a decoration. Plus, she said that it was a dark patina. If she wanted the word patina to have the later meaning, this makes little sense because of what a sheen is. It's not dark. Many sentences sound awkward and really should have been reworded. Sometimes it's because it's confusing. In the first chapter of Twilight, she said her mom had sacrifice in her eyes behind the promise. Is she saying that her mom would be sacrificing to bring her back home, or that she was sacrificing by sending her Bella to Charlie's? Excuse me, I don't know. Sometimes it just doesn't sound well written. In the third chapter, she describes the noise her truck makes like this. It was a high-pitched screech, and it was fast becoming painfully loud. I've heard English majors on my community say that one of the rules of writing is that you should be careful not to overuse adverbs, words with ly at the end. Meyer clearly has never been told this. My favorite example of a misused adverb is this. It comes from the first chapter of Twilight. Everything there was green. Trees, their trunks covered with the moss, their branches hanging down with canopies of it, the ground covered with ferns. Even the air filtered down greenly through the leaves. What the hell does that mean? I think it means that she's trying to describe what it looks like when the sun shines on trees, because leaves are translucent and it has a green tint. But is greenly even a word? If it is, it shouldn't be. If you put ly at the end of any other color, it just sounds terrible. I mean, orangely, bluely, brownly, redly. It just sounds dumb. It sounds like somebody who can't use English properly. Alright, so now how Meyer ignored basic storytelling structure. This is a plot diagram. Alright, so here we go. Start at 1. Exposition. This is where you set up the characters, the situation, the plot, what's going on. The second is the rising action, which leads to the main problem or conflict. Conflict is what drives the plot, by the way. It's as simple as that. I'd say this would be when Bella gets saved by Edward. Maybe it continues till she finds out he's a vampire, or maybe Bella figuring out he's a vampire is a subplot, even though it's the only source of conflict for 6 chapters, from the 3rd to the 9th. So it would be the plot then, even though from chapter 18 to 23, it's all about James causing trouble for the Cullens and the resolution of that, where the climax is. Whatever. If Bella hadn't gotten saved by Edward, she wouldn't have figured out he's a vampire or motivated Bella, or been motivated to seduce Jacob to get the information. So I'd say her getting saved by Edward by the van, is the rising action. Alright, now we've run into a real problem, because when Bella and Edward get together, I'd say at chapter 13, even though it's not official till chapter 13, there's no conflict at all till chapter 18 with James. You see on the chart how the plot moves from the rising action, towards the climax. But since there's a lack of conflict, the plot lays flat for 5, arguably 8 chapters, to allow Bella and Edward to fawn over each other and to have Edward whine about being a Meyer-Pyre. So it looks more like this. Flat, and then whoop, chapter 18. You could say that the conflict between the Native Americans and Cullens was there. However, this has nothing to do with the climax at all, and Bella isn't a member of the tribe that's against the Meyer-Pyres, so that doesn't have much to do with her. And let's not forget that New Moon wasn't even thought of till Meyer wrote Twilight and got it published, so the conflict with the Native Americans could have just laid there. Plus, Billy just warns Bella. He doesn't actually take any real action to stop Bella and Edward from being together. So the climax, which is when Edward and James fight, is in chapter 22. It has nothing to do with any other conflict that happened in the book. And there's the falling action when things get resolved. They kill James and keep Bella from being a Meyer-Pyre. Problem solved. Nothing gets resolved really at the end, but a sequel was intended in the first place, Forever Dawn, which became Breaking Dawn, whatever. Then they go to prom, and Bella's whining about not being a vampire begins. So, I don't know. From a plot standpoint alone, Twilight is a mess. From an organizational standpoint. So there you go. Meyer's a bad writer. Her prose are purple. She rapes her thesaurus. She overuses adverbs, and she ignores storytelling structure. I mean, like, pretty much all stories ever can be broken down like this, and she just throws it out the window. She obviously never took a creative writing class in her life, because if she had, Twilight probably would have been a little less painful to read. Alright. Auf Wiedersehen.